President Biden has been leaning into a major clash that has some Republicans now on defense. This is over kind of a classic zombie idea, as one renowned economist put it, and that was Paul Krugman, the Nobel Prize winner and New York Times writer, who's with us tonight. Krugman has been adding that President Biden's point here is basically correct, that Republicans have spent decades trying to gut the safety net, diverting what they would see as money towards Wall Street, which overlaps with their donor priorities, and all the while pushing against something quite rare in America, a multi-decade bipartisan consensus that basically supports Social Security as the safety net that it is, not as another chance to do Wall Street privatized gambling. Now, you can go back to Ronald Reagan, and I don't mean go back to President Reagan or even Governor Reagan. You could go back to the early 1960s, or a very early vintage Reagan going after Democrats on Medicare.
One of the traditional methods of imposing statism or socialism on a people has been by way of medicine. From here, it's a short step to all the rest of socialism. You and I can do a great deal. We can write to our congressmen, to our senators. And if you don't do this, and if I don't do it, one of these days, you and I are going to spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Fact check, false. We could tell you why. That was about 60 years ago. And we do have a small role, not as big as Europe, but a role in government-related healthcare options, and we don't have socialism in this country. I think everybody knows that. So that kind of doomsdayism, or trying to merge those issues, didn't work. Reagan didn't stop Medicare, but he kept fighting it, and as president, he went after all kinds of Social Security cuts. Also backing down, as I mentioned, because there's this public backlash, and Reagan, by the way, was a pretty popular incumbent president. Now, Speaker Gingrich also tried this in the 90s. The government shutdown was over, in part, proposed cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. And then President Bush famously tried to, quote, reform, or many people said gut, Social Security.
The president tonight, we're told, will say much more about how he plans to reshape Social Security.
I earned capital in the campaign, political capital, and now I intend to spend it. The system is headed toward bankruptcy. As we fix Social Security, we also have the responsibility to make the system a better deal for younger workers. And the best way to reach that goal is through voluntary personal retirement accounts.
Strengthen it, improve it, do not privatize it.
A dumb idea. I'm not convinced of any plan. I'm not convinced of the president's plan.
President Bush was going for that goal fresh off his reelection. He mentioned his political capital was the first big thing. You saw those big speeches. And even with all of that, it completely failed. And yet here we are again, which is why it's so interesting that so many Republicans were yelling lie when Biden referred to the fact that some in the party still want to do this. Here's Mike Pence pitching a Bush-era style plan earlier this month.
I think the day could come when we could replace the New Deal with a better deal. Literally give younger Americans the ability to take a portion of their Social Security withholdings and put that into a private savings account.
You know, some recurring political clashes feel like a kind of bickering that you could tune out and put aside. And then there are others like this that are actually about the safety and welfare of our senior citizens. They're about whether sometimes rich people aligned with Wall Street want to quite literally accuse everyone else of lying while raiding the Social Security safety net, such as it is in this country. This affects the livelihoods of tens of millions of people. This is important.